Welcome, guys. Welcome back to Miko's Corner once again. I hope you have a great day, guys. Today we're back with a video that was recommended by a subscriber called "The Battle of Singapore: Japan versus Britain." I don't know what this is about. What the hell is going on here? What's this? Is this just me or this map looks off? Look at this. Look at this. What the hell is this shit? Okay. So where was I? Oh yeah, a subscriber recommended this video. Apparently, it's very good. We'll see. I hope you guys like my reaction. Leave a like. How's it going?
This is Singapore, a tiny island covering just 600 square kilometers in Southeast Asia. Looking at its topical wealth and extravagance, it's hard to believe that it was once the scene of the largest surrender of the British Army ever recorded in history. Sandwiched between Malaysia and Indonesia in Southeast Asia, this sovereign island nation was and still remains the gateway to the rest of Asia. If one controls Singapore, they could control a vast majority of the Far East. The British Empire had always been interested in Singapore, as it was on the sea routes linking China and Europe. In 1867,
What's this creepy music for?
country became the crown colony and major base of the British Empire in Southeast Asia. The significant position of Singapore made it a desirable prey to Japan too. With Singapore in hand, the Japanese Empire would rule the major port to expand and reinforce its influence on other areas. Thus, a scramble between the two great powers was unavoidable, leading to the Battle of Singapore. This fierce fight took place in the Southeast Asian theater of World War II between the Japanese and British military from 8 to 15 February 1942. Invasion of Malaya. Japan commenced its invasion of Southeast Asia and the Southwest Pacific by assaulting Thailand and forcing the government to lend its border to attack other countries in Southeast Asia. And the next targets are Malay Peninsula and Singapore. At noon on the 8th of December, British Admiral Thomas Phillip led two battleships to destroy the Japanese amphibious troops, but encountered a fierce defeat that took his life. The Japanese...
The Prince of Wales, isn't that the ship that was with the hood when they sunk the Bismarck? I don't think I'm wrong here. Maybe I'm wrong, but if I'm not wrong, like, what the hell is that ship doing here? Wasn't it supposed to be in the Atlantic?
gained sea supremacy and terminated the supply lines for British troops on land, forcing them to flee to the south and retreat to Singapore. Over a month later, the last Allied forces retreated from Malay Peninsula, and Allied engineers blew a hole in the causeway, linking Johor, a state in the south of the Malay Peninsula, and Singapore. Some Japanese soldiers were disguised as civilians to intrude into Singapore. After 2 months, the battle ended with a complete victory of Japan, and the next target was Singapore. Initial Japanese landings. On February 8th in 1942, Yamashita's heavy guns laid down a barrage of 88,000 shells along the entire length of the Johor Strait, cutting telephone lines and effectively isolating forward units from rear areas. Fierce fighting raged throughout the day, with their superiority in artillery, aircraft, and intelligence, as well as the increasing number of amphibious forces. The Japanese gradually dominated. Further fighting followed throughout the dawn of the 9th of February, and the Australians either retreated or were seized. By the end of the day, more than 10,000 Japanese soldiers were in Singapore. Air Wars. When the Japanese attacked, the only hope of the Allies was the 232nd Squadron Royal Air Force.
I think this is going to be really interesting because I think I'm right here. If by the 8th of February they were already on land, that means that over the next 7 days it's going to be a brutal war, a brutal battle.
RAF, and the best aircraft were only 10 Hawker Hurricane fighters available in Singapore.
Okay.
However, the worst thing was that the Allied Air Force was outplayed by the quantity and quality of Japanese aircraft such as the Mitsubishi A6M0 and two long-range bombers called Mitsubishi G3M, codenamed Nell by the Allies, and Mitsubishi G4M, with codename Betty.
Dude, Is it just me or back then in the Second World War, all the car companies of today made, you know, weapons? Mitsubishi, Porsche. Okay, I may have, get a little bit over myself. Maybe, yeah. Tell me if other companies have made Lamborghini, Ferrari. Did they make tanks? I don't know. Maybe they did. Mercedes. I don't know if they did, but
The air raids never paused until dusk on February 8th. The remaining flyable hurricanes were withdrawn to Palembang, Sumatra. After that, no Allied aircraft were ever seen again over Singapore. The Japanese had achieved complete air supremacy. The Battle of Kranji. The Battle of Kranji was the second stage of the Empire of Japan's plan for the invasion of Singapore to breach the Jurong-Kranji defense line as part of their southward thrust towards the heart of Singapore City. The shoreline between the Kranji River and the Johor-Singapore Causeway was defended by the Australian 27th Brigade, led by Brigadier Duncan Maxwell. On February 10th, while leading the Johor Straits, the Japanese forces suffered stiff resistance. Oil from petrol tanks near Sungai Mandai Keshil was set alight and spilled into the straits and Kranji coastline, causing hundreds of casualties.
okay.
Due to the heavy loss, they nearly aborted the operation. However, a series of miscommunications caused the Allied forces to withdraw the defensive line, Jurong Kranji, which allowed the Japanese to swiftly gain strategic footholds.
Uh,
Japanese breakthrough. The withdrawal of Allied troops from the Kranji enabled the Imperial Japanese tank-armored forces to land ashore. Later on February 11th, with severe shortage of Japanese supplies, General Yamashita made an attempt to bluff Percival to surrender, asking him to give up his meaningless and desperate resistance. By this stage, the fighting strength of the 22nd Brigade had been significantly reduced to a few hundred, and the Japanese had captured the Bukit Timah area, including the Allies' main food and fuel supply depots. 2 days later, worrying about continual failures, Allied senior officers advised Percival to surrender to reduce civilian casualties, but refused. Alexandra Hospital Massacre.
yeah, you don't surrender. The thing is, listen, if you try to surrender, especially, I don't know if they knew what they were getting into, but the Japanese were extremely brutal with their prisoners. Same as the Nazis. So if you surrender, you might not die, maybe, or you might die. You might just be killed, but psychologically, you'll be, you know, a, a husk of yourself if you survive.
At about 1 p.m. on February 14th, the Japanese raged through the Alexandra Barracks Hospital and killed doctors, nurses, and even patients. A
Why?
British lieutenant acting as an envoy with a white flag approached the Japanese forces but was killed with a bayonet.
I
The next day, about 200 male medical staff and patients, some injured, were forced to walk 400 meters to an industrial area. They were all brutally stabbed to death with a bayonet.
Oh my God, Jesus Christ!
Fall of Singapore.
Did they do that just because it was, fucked up, just for the sake of being fucked up, or did they do it, to show the British, listen, if you don't surrender, we're gonna do more and more atrocities, you know?
On morning February 15th, 1942, the first day of the Lunar New Year, Singapore was suffocated in smoke and fire. The Japanese penetrated the last perimeter of the Allies. By this stage, the Allies ran out of rations and military supplies. The anti-aircraft guns were almost out of ammunition and were unable to disrupt Japanese air attacks, which were causing heavy casualties in the city center. At 9:30, Percival held a conference at Fort Canning with his senior commanders to decide whether to counterattack or surrender. After the heated argument and recrimination, all present agreed that no counterattack was possible. Percival opted for surrender. All military forces in Singapore surrendered unconditionally. Aftermath. The Japanese captured 50,000 prisoners in Singapore, bringing the total number of prisoners captured from December 8th to 120,000. More than a third of the prisoners did not survive the war, and those who did would bear physical and mental scars for the rest of their lives. The
Yeah.
Japanese occupation in Singapore would not end until their surrender to the Allies on August 15, 1945. The formal signing of the surrender instrument was held at the City Hall, Singapore on September 12, 1945. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel.
Alright, guys, this was a very good video. I didn't know anything about this. Now I have a little of, questions. Did Singapore, as a, as a nation, sort of resent the British uh, for giving up, and that's one of the reasons why what they used to get independence, or did they get independence for because they want to be independent? You know what I mean? Or did they use the listen, you surrendered to the Japanese. 120,000 people, a third of them they were killed. Most of them, those who survived were not doing well physically and mentally. Did they use that as an excuse to get independence? Because it's a great excuse. If you're gonna have to use an excuse, that's a great one. But yeah, I've heard that Singapore is a very interesting country. While on one hand, for a long time it was a dictatorship in many ways. On the other hand, it was the best. I won't say the best, but a very good form of dictatorship, if you will. What I mean by that, it wasn't a repressive government. Well, yes, it was. You go there with drugs, you're done. Um, Economically speaking, the country is doing so well. When you see all the other countries around them, their GDP per capita is insane when you compare them to the Philippines or Indonesia or Vietnam and even Australia. I mean, their GDP is extremely, extremely high, and I believe one of the reasons why it's so high is, first of all, as they pointed out here, their geopolitical, or at least their geographic importance, but also because majorly there are small nations, and I believe a small nation is much easier to um, better, if you want to say that, just to improve than a bigger nation. Because a bigger nation, like if you let's say you're the president of the United States, how much of a difference can you make when half the country won't like you no matter what? You know what I mean? So it's much more complicated. Anyways, guys, I hope you liked my reaction. If you did, leave a like, subscribe, and see you guys next time.